Okay. Oh, we got to let a large, noisy fire engine go by. I'm living in the heart of downtown Santa Barbara. You'd think it would be a quiet little tourist city. Nah, it's actually a city. It's actually a metropolis. I'm having a wonderful interview with pianist Iskander Zakirov. Uh, we're going to talk about his 2016, I think, isn't it? 2016,
Yeah. Yes.
2016 Blue Griffin CD release. Get this combination: two works, give or take 10, but two big people. Uh, Robert Schumann, the Fantasy Opus 17. I hardly hear it performed. There's a good, it's a major piece, I know, but at least in my neck of the woods, I don't hear it performed often, and it's because it's a monster, it's a beast, it's incredible. Three movements, and it speaks volumes about this man paired with Brahms' 10 of his 18, I think 18, right? Intermezzi. We're going to talk about how Iskander chose these 10 intermezzi, how he paired them together. But for me, as we spoke a little bit off camera, we're talking about Robert Schumann, the man in 1838, 36, 38. That's the period of the composition of this piece, is this Fantasy Opus 17. He's in the thralls of a knockdown drag-out with his teacher, who is the father of his future bride, although nobody knows whether it's going to happen or not at that time. Just a horrible story of the father-in-law refusing to let Schumann marry Clara Schumann. And then what transpires, and as most of us know, I think in those of us watching are mostly professional musicians, this tragedy of Schumann's mental illness and death in 1856. So that's what I want to cover, especially with the Fantasy in Opus 17. And then Brahms, the young, handsome young man who comes into the life of Clara. Are you there? Are you
I
still
am.
there? Okay. Here, I thought I'd have to redo that whole spectacular monologue, but let's start over just a little bit. So we've got Schumann, and then we got Brahms, who was a part of this tremendous triage, triangle, whatever you want to call it. Robert and Clara Schumann. Brahms was hopelessly in love with Clara. She, of course, was married, had children. Brahms even moved in with the family. You know, it helped with the kids running all over the place. All of that lifelong, I think, I now realize I think, and we're going to talk about a lifelong love interest with Clara Schumann that is reflected, maybe, we'll talk about that, in these 10 intermezzi that you've chosen. Okay, so let's get a little clear, and then we'll let Iskander speak a little bit instead of me. I want to just make sure we understand that you studied primarily at the Michigan State University, where you received your doctorate. Duquesne was in your life earlier in terms of degrees. You came to this country after, I mean, what we all envy, those of us who are musicians and have not a musical family. You were raised in a musical family. I want to talk about that, and went to the Uspensky Republic Special Music Academy and Lyceum when you were in Russia, in the Soviet Union.
Okay.
Talk to me about that youth, please, so I can shut up and listen to you talk for a bit.
Well, I was born in a family of musicians. My father was a composer. My mom is a pianist, and my uncle was a pianist. So there's a big musical family. So I didn't have a choice
Was
when I
that a
was.
good thing or a bad thing?
Um, I don't know. I
Interesting. I'm glad I asked. Interesting. Sometimes there's conflict. Yeah?
There is a conflict, but probably it's good when people know for you what you need to do. But however, I can recall my entrance exam to the Uspensky school, where I had to demonstrate some kind of maybe sing a song, to do something before this important people, to see your talents and stuff like that. And I entered the room and I didn't say anything. I got so shy, and at the same time, I hated them all. So I was standing in front of them, not saying anything. But then they started doing something with me, discovered perfect pitch and all these things. So I got accepted. The school was very, if you call it like Soviet Russian music school with all this teachers like the pushing you to practice and all of that stuff. And this is that was a good school, and even in Soviet Union scale, not just Uzbekistan, which didn't exist when the Soviet Union existed. In it, even in the Soviet Union scale, it was a good, decent school. Because I remember we traveled to Moscow once in a while just to see Moscow teachers and see how they teach and all of that. And we didn't look bad by any means. We were okay.
By the way, did you run into any? I don't want to get into a lengthy discussion, but as in Uzbekistani, was there any sort of prejudice? You were sort of an outlying region of the empire, of the Russian Soviet Empire. Just a thought.
You mean Uzbekistan?
Did you? Well, where you were Tashkent? You were born in Tashkent, yes. Which is, and then what? Where does Uzbek? I thought I saw Uzbekistan somewhere.
So let's say it's like the Kazakhstan is. It's a bottom part of Russia, bottom part of Soviet Union. It doesn't look big, but it is.
Kazakhstan.
And
Sorry, I got Uzbekistan in the way there. But you know what I mean? As an outlying republic of the Soviet Union, of
mhm.
republics, what did you find when you went into Russia itself? Anything at all? I don't want to cause any issues. I'm just kind of curious whether there was any kind of nothing, huh?
Nothing.
Good.
Nothing. Oh, and all of this, we need to realize that it's all of this. We didn't realize that it's gonna fall apart very soon. But, we were stunned by easiness of this, how it fell apart, and
So was the
so
world. It was very fast.
the world. So was the world. So it was. I remember these days and interesting days. Now they look. Now you see how they. It doesn't really relate to Schumann and Brahms, but these days people recall it sounds a bit of even romantic. But at that period of time, it was not. And however, you still something to remember, something to share with people, especially Americans who are really curious about it.
Yeah. And by the way, when did you come to the U.S.? You went to Duquesne, I think, for undergraduate work, and then got your doctorate eventually at University of Michigan.
I spent My family immigrated to the United
Oh,
States.
the whole family. Wonderful.
Immigrated, and um, I got green card. You know what green card is,
I
but
do.
not
I went to the UK and needed a green card. Yes, I
as
know.
a person with some kind of extraordinary ability because I have a synesthesia. If
What's
you know,
that? I've heard the word, but
so
remind me.
when your certain note is associated with the light, some
With
type of
color.
everything in color, and I've done few projects for Uzbekistan TV, and some of them were aired in some other TVs in some other places, and few projects. And all these projects I submitted were submitted here for this thing called the highly skilled workers and other things here in the United States, and I was awarded a green card here for that project. I spent a year in the United States doing nothing because doing all my documentation that were required because it was in order to get your status in the United States, you have to go through many steps. You like not to know about it, but this is what happens.
I'm
So
glad to hear about it because people have said, "Oh, people just crawl, pour in from the board." No, no, no. There's a whole process, very complicated, very intense, and so on that you went through.
if you want to do it legally and
Yeah,
lawfully, it's different.
yeah.
So in 2004, I entered Duquesne to study with David Allen Ware, who is the prominent American pianist, an incredible teacher and pianist. And very knowledgeable person. And I remember him playing 32 Beethoven sonatas, for example. His incredible repertoire, incredible skills, knowledge, and everything. And I was happy to study with him for nearly 2 years. And then I entered Michigan State as a doctor of piano. My research on Edward Grieg's lyric pieces.
How did that happen? What brought Edward Grieg into your life? It's that's a
Well,
far north.
First of all, I simply like Grieg. I think this music is underestimated. Um, People think that this music is too simple for them to really pay attention to, which I think this is the main reason why we should pay attention to it. He was incredible composer. I really like Grieg, and this is a composer who will be always fresh to us. And the way he talks to us, and the way he writes music, the way his music sounds, the way how he writes the music. I mean, to me, it's still incredible. And when I have a chance, I play Edward Grieg.
And so when you have a chance, you'll make a recording.
I made the recording of it, yes, of Edward Grieg, yes. And
you
actually,
have to put that up on your page as well. Are you kidding? That's wonderful.
I did it. I played also 2 Mozart sonatas along with it.
That's what I think I've seen the CD where Mozart is the top.
Edward Grieg, yes. Yeah, and that was my first Blue Griffin CD, actually.
Well, let's kind of get back on topic a little bit. Let's refer again to this wonderful recording, the Fantasy Opus 17 of Robert Schumann, and then these 10 intermezzi of Brahms that you selected, and they're not in order. Why don't we deal with the Fantasy? It's in 3 incredible movements. They're all virtuosic, for sure. I've mentioned my own thoughts about this kind of a mind that was here and there and everywhere. Harmonically, it's all over the place, isn't it? I think the first movement, for example, is just all over the place harmonically. It's fascinating.
Harmonic, yes, but it's interesting that first of all, I think my answer to why he didn't call it sonata is because sonata sounds too structural to me. Maybe he didn't want to be compared with Beethoven directly. Didn't want to compare it to, for example, Haydn, who was incredible sonata form writer. I mean, he was incredible Haydn was master of design, and his shape and design was incredible. Maybe Schumann didn't want to be compared with them directly. I like this, maybe it's too subjective. I like in Fantasy, I like this effortless imperfection you can see during the Fantasy. Sometimes I see like how his thought is going, but then it stops. Without any reason, especially in the first movement, it just stops suddenly, and something else comes up.
Where we talked to
something else. For example, the stuff that Im Legedenton, when you see this middle section in the first movement, something that it feels like something that happened long time ago within the one piece. Then he comes back to it, and this improvisational style of it, it's too easy to call it improvisational. I would say this is effortless imperfection, how he shapes it. And it makes it very difficult to play, because your brain thinks structurally. And here it almost doesn't exist, so that's very difficult for many people.
Let me jump in there. Again, we've had a pre-video, a little bit of chat. We know that Robert Schumann was put into an asylum after trying to commit suicide. He had many mental problems throughout his life. I think at this point, I'm not trying to denigrate the composer. This is a genius, without doubt. but a troubled genius, nevertheless. And what I'm trying to say, especially in the fantasy, is what you have just described, these mood changes. And I mentioned to you something about maybe today we might have described him as being bipolar, which is to say manic and then depressive, manic, depressive. These mood changes, which are also, in terms of harmony, very, very sudden harmonic changes. In the first movement, I'm remembering, very interesting, but they're shockers. And the second movement and the last movement in particular is just kind of reminiscent. We know that Clara had to have been aware of this piece. He may even have written it for her, maybe. I mean, I don't know if she ever performed it, but you know what I mean. He was courting her. She was in his mind. She was a virtuoso pianist in her own right. But I think what stands out to me, I hope I'm not exaggerating it too much, is a troubled. It's genius, but a troubled mind, maybe even, forgive me, but schizophrenic mind, in the sense of these sudden, tremendous mood changes without any warning at all. It's all brilliant. But there you are, a man who was struggling with these issues, and this composition in particular, especially naming the three movements. He named them twice, I think, and they're interesting, fascinating titles. I don't know if I have them here. You might remind me. But Strangeness. Genius, but strangeness.
Yeah.
Speak to that and tell me I'm all wet.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I don't know what's more in this, Schumann or we also need to remember that he wrote it for Beethoven Monument.
Yes, and dedicated it to Liszt, so of course it was virtuosic.
That was virtuosic. I don't know. I don't know what's more in this. It would be, of course, it would be interesting to see how he wrote it, the way how he wrote it, with what was in his first priority in this piece, what was second priority. Sometimes composer writes the piece, and he starts writing something, then something else comes up, and actually ends up with something else, then it's a little bit different than what initially he thought. This is a part of the mystery. Maybe this is Schumann to me is the most personal composer in terms of the all romantic, at least, maybe than the whole history.
I think of him as the prime example of high romanticism, which for me was that period in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 19th century, where people really, that's what took me when I read the letters between the Schumanns and Brahms also. They took this stuff very, very, very seriously. They took the idea of high romanticism very, very seriously. So, I'm thinking, here's a quote. Quote, resounding through all the notes in the earth's colorful dream, there sounds a faint, long-drawn note for the one who listens in secret. Now, there's a reference, of course, to the beloved, to Beethoven's beloved. But you know what who I think that one is listening in secret is Clara Schumann. I think this piece is for Clara. What do you think?
I agree. I agree with that. And to me, actually, the most me personally, the most significant movement is the third movement. To me, I don't know. This is something that I don't know. I can't explain many things. I can't explain from the logical standpoint why. Yeah. But we're trying to explain logically the piece that is absolutely not logical, and there is a beauty.
Yes, absolutely. And I look at that last movement as I've seen it before, a kind of apology, really, in a way. Forgive my excesses, my dear beloved secret admirer Clara, perhaps. See what I mean? In other words, it is langsam. Getragen, it's beautiful and meditative after these two more tumultuous movements. What do you think about that? A kind of apology in a way for his excesses?
Something that very Brahmsy. This piece, in terms of the looking back, in terms of the trying to philosophically think what happened over the years. And actually that leads to intermezzo somehow. I
Indeed,
like
and you know, my point is that you nailed that third movement of the Schumann, of the fantasy, in that looking back kind of fondly, and then as you linked it to Brahms, as I mentioned to you off camera, to me, these Brahms, and I want you to talk about the 10 that you selected of the 18 intermezzi and why, because it's not in order particularly, there's a reason why you chose these, but that the idea that Brahms, as we discussed earlier, had a I now realize, I think, a lifelong love of this woman, and looked back and looked back and looked back. What do you think? Fondly, beautifully, gorgeous.
Brahms, this is his difference from Wagner, typically. I think this is their main difference because Wagner's was more of looking into future composers. Because without Wagner, we wouldn't have Mahler, we wouldn't have Schonberg. Without Wagner,
Yep.
and I think Wagner is to me, Wagner is the strongest. He probably would be the composer that opened us actually the late Romantic period and even 12th in many ways. Brahms is different, this is their main difference in terms of how they look at things, how they look at life and everything. And why I chose these, I like some of them, really like personally, and they mean something for me, not in a sentimental way, just mean something. Some of them I thought they're very significant. I don't want to tell you which one I like and which one I think they're significant.
But the significant ones are there. The ones that everyone knows are there.
Let them live in peace,
Yeah.
between each other. Because music also, we know that music also argues with each other. Pieces of music. They don't like each other and everything. To me, it was interesting to look at Brahms' music in general because in the smaller form, as we all know, in art, like in nature, there are pieces of small form, but they look huge in their impact. Because form in music is just a structure. The size is just a structure for the music. And for their importance for Brahms' life, for Brahms' music, I don't know who Brahms would be without these intermezzos. Of course, he would be a great composer, but we see something new in him.
Yeah, I think the intermezzi are really very, very intimate. That's
Very
kind of what I meant. There's a tremendous sadness, beautifulness.
I see some kind of I don't see kind of a desperate intimacy like we see in Schumann's. Let's see, for example, in his symphonic etudes or his other pieces, like some of his sonatas, like Second Sonata, for example.
Yeah.
We don't see this here. Brahms still tries to think about it. And again,
these are reflective, beautifully reflective.
These pieces are huge. These pieces, he proves that music, it's not the source of aesthetics for Brahms. It's a lifelong experience. And the pieces are interesting in a sense that it's hard to say how to play them well. For example, there is always some kind of a scale. We have some, for any piece, in almost any piece, we have some kind of, in our mind, we have some kind of a golden standard how this piece should be played. This tempo should be taken. This 90-80% of notes should be played correctly. Sometimes 70% is enough, but depending on the difficulty of it. In these pieces, you don't really know, and no one knows how to play them well. You mostly like sit on the piano and you talk to yourself. You try to see what the piece means to you. Because you don't really know how to. For example, I would never play these pieces in a concert with a Schumann fantasy because it's difficult to play these pieces in a concert because you don't know who you're playing them for. You don't know who these people are, why they came here, will they understand you? And this is difficult. These pieces, that's the problem with these pieces, and in the uniqueness of this.
Yeah, some, of course, are classics. Many people even can hum some of those tunes in one or two of the intermezzi. Da da dee dum. Excuse me. Just caused me to choke there. I'm such a horrible singer, but you know what I mean. There's an intimacy that has been developed over time. People love some of these intermezzi. Others I had never really, I may have heard them over time, but you chose a couple that were very, very interesting. And I'm not quite sure what I guess, I think we might be on parallel tracks in a way. The way I look at these intermezzi, and I still can't get out of my mind Clara, I can't get out of my mind Robert Schumann, that they were so thick, and that after the fact of Robert Schumann's life and death, Brahms was a solo man all of his life. You know what I mean? I think this is just a tremendous portrait of heartbreak in terms of, I now think I understand something very intense about his love for Clara Schumann that could not be, that he knew, everybody knew, Clara herself. But what I'm trying to say is these intermezzi are so comforting.
Yeah.
You know, there, as you may have mentioned, some of the other works, the larger orchestral works, were kind of troubled, even they enjoy and explore all kinds of discomforts and challenges and so on. But the intermezzi are so gracious, I'm thinking.
You know, these pieces grow in your all your life. For example, when you play them, you know, sometimes when you play them, and especially when you record them, you think that it's well done and something was really good. Then the little time passes, and then you see how completely unsuitable it is, and how you should change absolutely everything in these pieces.
The maturation process involved in masterpieces. You know,
Yes,
you think you get them, and then 10 years later you've matured, the pieces have matured in your mind.
but you don't really know how to do it, and sometimes you actually come to the piano and play them exactly in this. This is something that the continuous learning for you as well. This is something that it's a more of a book that you will read every time, and every time you're applying it to your life, applying to your state of your of everything,
Yeah.
thinking everything, and then um, hoping that music responds to you.
Also, you know, I'm thinking of Melville's Moby Dick. In the United States, as high school kids, most of us were made back in the olden days to read Moby Dick. We had no clue at all, even how sentences were constructed in the 19th century. We just had no idea. I've recently reread it now that I'm an old man and loved every single word of it. And that's the beauty of art of all kinds. You come back and come back. Things change. Your growth about it. How do you feel at this stage in your life? Especially about the Schumann. It's a monster, and you triumphed over it. It's a beautiful, beautiful recording of the Schumann, and of course the intermezzi. I'm sure you're going to say, oh well, in 20 years, ask me that question again. But are you feeling comfortable? This is a recording. This is a legacy.
You know, I don't know. I don't want to. To be honest, I listened to this recording maybe once or twice. Once it was when it was a master copy to approve for a CD.
Sure.
And another time I listened one more time. Um, I don't know. I think it was okay. I think I played it. Um,
It's now 4 years later, roughly, from the recording sessions.
I think I should certain things I should have done better. Still certain things I shouldn't have done at all. Again,
This is the trouble, isn't it?
that was my vision. That was my understanding of this music at that particular time. And again, this is I don't think it's smart to kill yourself after each unsuccessful recording at successful spot, because it's just waste of time. I think it's important to tell yourself, I did my best this time. Next time I should do better.
And also, we're not really talking technically. You're non pareil technically in terms of this recording, but I think what we agree on is that our interpretations change. Our understanding of the deeper levels and meaning of music changes, of course, with life. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth the pursuit.
Absolutely.
You know, absolutely is so. So I would say I salute you for an incredible undertaking with the Schumann. As I said today, I mean, I've listened to it earlier and so on and heard performances, but to watch the score go by today and wonder how does the human mind, let alone the arms and feet and fingers, cope with this genius. So all of my remarks about Schumann are based on his genius. Absolute genius, and there were dysfunctions that are also insightful and intriguing about this terribly complex human being. I think we're about done. Do you have what's going on next? Anything in the works? What's happening? I know you're teaching and so on.
Well, I will. I'm planning to make certain recordings. I'm I'm still in the process of thinking of it. You know, I don't have a long-term plan for in 6 months I have to do certain things.
That is good.
Would like to do certain recordings. I think I have something to play. We'll see how things work out, and um, depends what shape I'll be in terms of not just technique but typically.
Yeah.
I would. I think I should record something.
Can you give me 1 second? There's a very loud motorcycle going by. Would you mind repeating that? I think I'll something.
Yes, I mean, I try. I think I will record something. We'll see how things work out
Yeah.
for me.
And we know, by the way, it's a huge process and it costs a lot of money. Come on, let's get real. It's
It's a huge process. It's a very nerve-wracking. You have to do this horrible thing when listen to your tracks of your own playing and to choose which is the least, which is kind of would work with something else, and this is something you really don't like, and there's no enjoyment, and there's no enjoyment. It takes a lot of time, and you have to play completely differently than you play for audience or for something.
Yes.
However,
Yes.
to make music for the CD is easier because people don't listen to the whole CD at once. People listen to particular tracks, and it's a bit easier than this regard. But
You know, how do you feel about? I mentioned legacy a moment ago, and I'm hearing you not so interested, maybe, but that can't be correct. In other words, any artist that wants to leave something, and you have just done so with the Schumann, with the Schumann CD. So there is a level of perfection that you want to achieve, yeah, because you know people will listen to this CD for years to come.
I don't know what the perfection is in
Touche.
Schumann.
Yeah, touche.
I don't really know. I don't know how. I wish I knew, but I don't really know what the perfection is and what the how to achieve it.
Hmm.
I play as I hear it, and I play it as I feel it and think it. And this
In
is
the moment of your life, yeah.
and that shows state of my mind at this particular moment, state of my understanding of piano sounds, Schumann piano music, and this is the most significant Schumann's piece.
Yes.
The most significant, and kind of represents Schumann's legacy because it's a Beethoven's music, and Schumann is a Beethoven's kid, and at the same time, it's really pushes us to the future of the music, to Brahms and to late romantic composers. It's a
And
couple,
Liszt, not to forget Liszt.
and
Yeah.
not
And all these people knew each other. That's the other thing. Coffee house gatherings, all the rest of it.
people knew each other, yes, and they were all complemented each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess we'll leave it. Is there anything that I have not asked or that you would like to say about this particular wonderful CD of Schumann Fantasy Opus 17 and Brahms 10 Intermezzi?
It was a pleasure talking to you, Dan.
Wonderful. Okay, let's just do a little quick review. We are speaking of pianist Iskander Zakirov's 2016 Blue Griffin CD release. These two incredible works, Schumann, the Fantasy Opus 17, three movements, huge piece, a giant challenge to any pianist. Brahms, the 10 Intermezzi, it's all about interpretation and color and mood, and it's so beautiful. And your choices of the 10 among the 18 that he composed are fabulous. Did I mention Blue Griffin release? All of this is going to go up. We're going to put up the video interview later. In a few weeks, I promise, I'll try and get a written interview. I'm a little bit behind on reviews at the moment. Sounds like the story of my life these days. But what I want to do is get the video up, get people looking at the page at performingartsreview.net, get them linking to the CD and so on. And then, we'll hit them up a little later with my review, which of course will be brilliant. And and people will flock back. But the idea is, of course, not to sell more CDs. It's about to let people know that you are around and that you are available, okay? And you're a superb pianist. It's been a great pleasure to hear your music and have a chance to chat with you finally at last.
Thank you very much. Nice to
Okay.
talk to you.
See you. Bye-bye.